Hello everybody, welcome to Screenwriting with Final Draft. It's our master class. So here we are, week 3, script format and screenwriting. Really excited to get into this and lots to talk about and some review too. So let's jump right in. First I just want to again welcome everyone for joining us. If you haven't seen the first 2 weeks and you're joining us here now fresh for week 3, welcome. But you're through this Eventbrite digital ticket, you can go back and watch weeks 1, 2. And here you are, week 3. Week 4, same thing. If you can't join us live, not a problem. You can always rewatch it. So everything's made available for post viewing. So it's a really exciting part of what we can offer through these virtual workshops as well. So I just want to start off. I want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and then we have all our library partners. So the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So in terms of access and support, you can access computers. So we have our digital arts computer stations available at all 3 libraries. So they're 27-inch iMacs, and you can totally just load, come in there and get onto Final Draft. They're all loaded with either Final Draft 11 or 12, and you can get going right in there with the software there. So just please join us, come to the libraries. You can check out the computer stations and book some time and work on everything there. So everything that we're showing and demoing here, again, we're talking about creative concepts and then getting into some of the technical software capabilities, which is really fun. So we'll get into script format, script writing, and just things to think about as we're doing this as well. It's some best practices. Sometimes things that, even when I was preparing this, things that I don't even always think about are coming up in my head, and I'm like, oh, wait a sec, things that we need to think about. So that's the fun part we'll look at today. The other thing too is we'll look at some of the collaboration tools next week. So that's how we're going to wrap things up with. There's collaboration, so you could be writing, someone else could be writing with you, and the Final Draft software was really good. Is if you install it, you can just go to read-only mode. And that's the really cool thing, is that you can go to read-only mode, and that way if a colleague or an associate of yours, a friend, is wanting to read your script, here you send them a Final Draft file, they want to read your script, it's not a problem. They can actually open the software, go to read-only mode, read your script. They won't be able to do notes and collaborate and things like that, but it lets you still read the script. So it's kind of like a Adobe Acrobat, like a PDF reader, where it still lets you read the script and get going that way. So it does nothing's lost in terms of that process in that world. Okay, so in terms of what we'll be looking at today, so we're going to look at acts and sequences and scenes, and I want to go over this again because a little bit of some more thought process occurred to me in terms of making sure that we're understanding the script structure, and I think that's really important. Is same with like building a house, you really need to understand, the kind of foundation, then you're putting up framing to build the house, then you start to fill it up, and you lead yourself all the way to the roof, and kind of like that's the end of the film. And that's the same thing, that we really want to think about the acts, but the sequences, and what are all the little parts, and and what scenes mean too. We're going to look at going from the beat board or treatment to the script, and how we start to fill that in and populate that, preparing to write your script, some additional thoughts on the prep, character names. Then we're going to dive right into script format. What does it mean? Because I think it's a little bit of a different format, and we want to look at how does script format relate to film production. So many of you might be writing your script and you want to move right into production using some of our digital arts computers for editing, using some of the digital arts equipment through the libraries like cameras and lights to shoot your film. So we want to look at the script format and how it relates to the production, and how we can start to understand why it's written in a certain way, because the script format is definitely unique. It's not a traditional novel writing kind of process. It's very unique to screenplay and script format, and it's different than being for playwriting. So like when you're doing a stage play, and again that's very different. So the script format is quite unique to script writing and screenplays. Final Draft formatting tools, we'll go over some of the keys and the buttons and additional tools that can be made available to us. So in terms of acts and sequences, this is just one thing I wanted to one thing I wanted to look at, and the idea is, using a 3-act script or story structure, you're also including sequences or key story or plot points. And I think that's, a cool way to think about, what these things do, and how they work and how they function in a lot of these kind of areas. So what I want to do is actually look at. I just want to get to this little part here. So what I'm going to do is we want to look at how we can use the beat board and start to link the beats or sequences under an act. And I think there's always, like I always mentioned, there's always a few ways to do things. And I was thinking, I'm like, well, you know what? It would be really nice to have the beat board work in a way that we can have act one and then put all the beats within that act. And that's a nice way to do it. It can make it a little bit of a cleaner concept. So I'm just going to look at something here. So if we go back to our beat board idea here, I'm just going to go right to the computer. So I have Final Draft open. So this is what we were doing, the Ghost in a Mansion. This was like the script we've been working on here. Let me just go full screen here. So this is the script we've been working on, and what's nice about it is I was like, well, we can also make it like this, where we can join everything. And I'm going to just unjoin this. So here's a really quick way to join things. So let's say you have act one and you got the beats. So beat one, beat two. And I'm thinking these are, if you start to think of beats as sequences, and I was trying to think, how do we identify that in a really nice way? So, if we do this, and you start to bring in the beats and the sequences, and you start to figure out kind of what the lengths will be of these. You start to get the act and then the beat, and I thought that's a nice way to really line things up. So, we're trying to figure out how do we create all of these acts, right? So you can see right here, I do act one, and I have sequences: beat one, beat two, beat three, and that's a really good way to think of the script. Is within the beats or within these sequences, you then have the scenes. And that takes us back to the idea of the script itself is written as scenes. And within that way, when we're looking at story structure and the beat board, it really helps to pre-plan your screenwriting if we look at the acts, sequences, and then within that, we're going to take the sequences and break them down into scenes. And that is the rudimentary, basic element of the script are the scenes. So, by pre-planning everything and figuring out, what we're doing, this makes for a really nice way to, to bring things up and in, right? And we can quickly move them and so on. So it's a really cool, concept of what how we can work these. So here we go. We have our resolution and B2, B3 like that. Okay, so the same thing would go here. Like if I take my act two, right, and then we're building it in like 1, 2, right, and that's new beat, act two. So you just simply, if I take these, act two, and if I take these and I drop them in here, they're going to link. That's a really nice quick way to just connect these over. So now I get this nice tree structure. There's going to be a title sequence. And maybe here I want this prologue to happen kind of in the middle of the film. And I'm going to have this opener as well. So you can start to see look how cool this is. We start to get this kind of spider web of, how this is all going to work. And I think this really helps you get the story structure really plotted out. So I thought that was the one thing that I felt was missing in terms of, um, just the final kind of structural organization. That it really helps me to wrap my head around, okay, this is how the film is going to be. So you can see there's a lot happening in Act 1. And that's just because, this is, I think, the reality in filmmaking is that you need to expose, you need all the exposition, you need everything to happen in Act 1. And that's crucial. And so there's got to be a lot of stuff happening, like that opener, title sequence, right? You need people to engage the audience. Then you can slow things down a little bit as you build into, towards the climax. But I think that Act 1 it really needs to hook people. And you can see there's kind of this huge blend of stuff that needs to happen in Act 1. Act 2, there's, kind of 3 sequences. Act 3, there's a couple sequences. Maybe there's more. So then you take each sequence and you go, well, there's a bunch of stuff happens here. So like, for example, let's look at this one, Act 1, Beat 1. Susie drives to the mansion of her great aunt. There's winding road through forest. Mansion is huge and spooky. Susie enters as cold wind hits her face. So this one is, probably, 5 to 6 or 7 scenes when you break it down. And that's the key, is to think about it that way, is that, it's going to be Susie drives to the mansion. Like, that's just the scene. She's driving. Exterior, interior. And, what does all this mean? You might not know yet if you haven't looked at scripts before, but this is the whole scene breakdown, is then you have interiors, exteriors. So you can see like this one sequence consists of probably 5 to 7 scenes. And that's how you want to make sure that you're ready to write your script once you have this kind of whole spider web broken down. So this looks pretty healthy to me. Like, okay, I got a good idea of what I'm going to write, how I'm going to write. Now, why do we do this? And I think this is always the why, not just the how, but why do we do this? We want to have our story, structured out, because then the scenes can just be written and flow from one to the next, because we need to get from point A to point B within the sequence. And by writing out what that sequence goals, what the goals are of the sequence, we know how to get from, point A to point B, and we have to write the in-between. And in the in-between is where we have that creative potential, where we can, have a little bit of fun, we can have some extra scenes that maybe help tell about character and things like that. So a little bit more on that shortly. Okay, so this is, the key. I just wanted to go back and review that, is using the beat board to really help ensure visually you understand your story structure and that you're pre-planning and for your screenwriting. Okay, so scripts and scenes. So while the beat board focuses on these acts and sequences in those rectangles, the actual script writing the screenplay, consists of writing individual scenes. So it'll be scene 1, exterior, winding road, day. Right? Susie is in a car driving down the windy road. That's it. That's a scene. And within the script, you can have hundreds of these scenes. Sometimes, there can even be 1,000 scenes, depending on how complex the script is. So, a 100-page script will easily have 100 scenes or more, 150 scenes. Because every time you go from, inside, outside, you're defining it as a new scene. So here's a little bit more on that. So a scene's defined by a specific location setting. For example, interior, library, day. Once the scene moves outside, it becomes a new scene, right? So I know I'm using the word scene here twice, but once that action moves outside, it becomes a new scene. For example, exterior, library, day. So we start interior, library, day. The character walks out. Then we're exterior, library, day. So it's a scene 2. Now, this structure might sound a little bit overly complicated, or why do I need to have a scene every time I go inside, outside? It's too much work. I don't know why. So it's designed because it's mimicking the film production process. Because oftentimes when you're making a film, it's difficult to just move from the inside to outside within one shot, even though you could do it. And most of the time, you got to remember that, your exteriors are usually filming on one day or one part of the day, and the interiors you're doing on a whole other day. And why do we do that? Because the idea here too is that oftentimes your interiors might be in a totally different physical location. So you might be an exterior of, let's say, a castle, but the interior might very well be a sound stage where you built the sets, or inside a theater where you built the sets, or some sort of a house where you're just using that. Now, and we don't know. This is the magic of film, that you can have, you can be outside somewhere and then inside somewhere totally different. And it makes it, then just by editing, we bridge the two together, and you have no idea that that exterior was shot in Montreal and the interior is from in Spain, and that's fine. That's just how it can be, and so that's why every time we go to a different location setting, even though it's the same location but a different setting, so interior or versus exterior, it's a whole new scene. So there can be exceptions. You might just be like a continued scene. You specifically write in your script that the camera follows the character inside outside. Then you're just making that real necessity. But in the filmmaking process, we have to understand too, even you as a screenwriter, that might just be negated and it won't be done that way because it might just not be feasibly possible to do that based on the location. So for example, if you wrote something about a castle, like I was explaining, it might not be possible to go from the inside to the outside of the castle because maybe the outside of the castle that you're using is totally abandoned and there's bats living inside and you can't use the inside, but the outside looks beautiful. That is very typical. There could be like older buildings where the inside just doesn't work anymore, and you want that new looking, purpose-built set. Right? So we got to always understand it. So that's why we have different scenes. That's the why, and then the how is we basically create a new scene. So in Final Draft, we can create new scenes as we go. Okay, so we're translating. So I showed you guys last week. We did we went from like the beat board to the script, and which is great. So we it brings things over. I'm just going back here for a second. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So, okay, fantastic. Okay, so we have our beat board, and then when we go to the script, so check this out. So you go from the beat board, and I'm going to go to the script, normal view. So here's our script. So we start to have everything, kind of how we've broken it down originally, right? So we have the script, but this isn't the script format. This is just taking what we've put into the beat board in our notes, and it just gives me the reference here. So I can start typing and having that on the screen. And this is really just to help, but this is not your script. This is definitely not script format or anything like that. So by understanding then the goal, once you're in this, you're basically doing a decomposition of your acts and sequences into these individual scenes. So by understanding the goal of each sequence within the acts and overall story structure, we're writing the scenes towards the desired outcome to move to the next sequence or act. So that's the idea of going from point A to point B. Now here is where the creative story, you can really flourish and you can change things. So, while there's these goals to achieve, you can have scenes that help build characters. There could be something funny about a character. Maybe there's a scene with a character and a pigeon and the pigeon's annoying the character. These are character building scenes. They're not necessarily totally advancing the plot to get us from point A to point B in that sequence, but they're helping develop the character. We could also be introducing a location, and that doesn't have to be goal-based either. So you might just need a scene to say, hey, we're in this fancy castle. We're gonna have the character walk through. And it's not unimportant as a scene. It's not a throwaway scene, I don't want to call it, but it helps, again, to establish where we are, and it's going to help the plot. So these are those additional scenes that are outside of the pure plot, and they're really adding garnish to the dish. So think of, cooking, if you just have noodles, it's bland. If you start adding some herbs and and spices and things, you start to make it a lot more exciting. So that really brings up the characters and locations, and that's really key. That in the scene when you're writing, you can add this gravy to the overall piece that you're working on. Okay, so here's the main thing. So before you even start to write your script, you got to prepare just to make sure you have your act structure. So kind of a checklist. Do you have your act structure? Is there a beginning, middle, end? Act 1, 2, 3. Maybe it's 5 acts, and that's okay too. But just, I recommend starting with a 3-act structure. It's a really simple way: beginning, middle, end, climax, conclusion, resolution. Maybe there isn't a resolution, but beginning, middle, end. Then you want to make sure you have your sequences within the beat board or written as a treatment that we talked about last week that show the plot structure with goals and outcomes of each sequence. Then you want to have an ending. This is, I think, really crucial. Sometimes, writers will say, "Hey, I didn't really know what the ending would be," but you really should have an idea of what your ending is going to be. And by understanding what the ending is, you know what you need to write from the beginning to bring you to that ending. So it's kind of like if you just go for a drive and you don't really know where you're going to go. Sure, but if you're going to this specific location, you know where to drive, how to drive there, and you might think of fun stops to do on the way. So that's generally, you want that goal. What is your ending? And then you write towards that ending. Then you want to think of what are all the character names. Sometimes you might not have the names yet in your beat board or treatment. You might just have them as a friend. So you want to think about what the character names are, leads and supporting characters. And then consider images, music, and film references to help with your creative workflow. This could be like an online folder where you gather some music or some images, film stills, references from other movies. And you want to have that folder so throughout you can understand visually when you're writing a description of a dark, moody castle. You want to have the photos or paintings that represent that dark, moody castle, because it just helps add a little bit of authenticity, if you will, to your writing process by having that. Okay, so character names. Just a bit of info on this. So you want to consider things to consider with names. Do you need a last name? And this is, you might be, okay, that sounds weird. Like, why am I worried about that? John Smith, that's the character name. That's fine. But let's say, you name it something famous. You go Angelina Jolie as your character name. But that's a famous person, right? So it can be a challenge to release a film with a character name that is identical to a person that's famous or well known. And using a last name also becomes harder for clearances. So what are clearances? Clearances are when you're registering for copyright or when the film is to be broadcast or distributed. They look at, lawyers and clearance houses will look at what the last name is and if there is someone like that, or if the last name means something. Maybe the person's, in legal trouble, or they're a politician and things like this. So it's harder to get a copyright of your entire piece of film, and when it's done, if you have a last name or a full name, first last name, that's identical to someone that's doesn't want to be used in films or has bad connotation. So really consider that. Do you need a last name? A lot of films will just have first names. And that's the easiest way to approach it, because then you're just a first name that, just because there's a Tim and there's another Tim that's doing something else, or that is saying, hey, I think that's me. It's just Tim. There's no last name, so you can't say that it's that person. So another thing to consider, is the name unique or common? Consider the implications of what the name means. Is it a very common name, or is it very unique? What does that name say about the character? So if you have a character and their name is Moon, what does that mean? Like, that's going to be very unique and bizarre, but maybe it's really important that the character's named that because, again, for a plot point, right? So you wouldn't just want to have a character named Moon for no apparent reason unless it really was important to the script, because obviously other characters will be asking, why is your name Moon? Like, where did this come from? Also, is it very common? Like I said before, like a John Smith, a Jane Doe. What does it say about the character if it's this common name? Because then you're saying they're just, this character's kind of common in a way, right? So there's so many implications on just choosing a name. in your script. So think about all of these things. And then avoid using the name of a person that inspired the character or that the character is based on. So as writers, we oftentimes will, be inspired by some real life characters or real life events. And, we push it all the way around, but there could be some inspiration. So if you're inspired by this specific person, don't use the same name. It's going to be very obvious that, that drew some inspiration. And this can happen too. It could be family or friends that you have. You use their name, and they can get quite upset because they'll think, hey, that character kind of seems to be like me, right? And you're like, well, it's kind of inspired by something that I remember that we did and that happened to you. And again, that is opening it up to potential legal problems. So these are some of these realities of some of these, thinking of meanings, thinking about, these legal clearances, and just staying in the clear. If you don't have last names, it's just so much easier. If the last name is really important, try to have one that's not going to be, doesn't reference someone specifically, and it doesn't lead back to the person that you might have been inspired by to write that character on. Okay, so script format. Let's get right into script format and what that means. So here's just a little sample, script formatting, and Final Draft will let you do all of this. So whether you're writing the software or whether you're using the iPad version as well, it will do the script formatting. So here's how the script format works. So usually it goes like this. So interior, old farmhouse day. And then the character name, there might be some description elements. Narrator, it was a dark and snow-filled night. So you can see the narrator, the dialogue. Julie, so another character name. I can't believe it's snowing again. And there'd be description. So Julie is walking through the old farmhouse, and that's it. That's our format. So scene heading, description, there can be notes like sound effects or visual notes, character names, their dialogue, and that's it. So we basically have settings, action described, character names, their dialogue, and there can be also some additional nuances in terms of how they say it. So it could be like narrator excitedly, it was a dark and snow-filled night, right? So you're telling the person how it will sound. When you're reading it, you'll get a sense of how it will sound when it's performed. So Julie, softly, could be in brackets. I can't believe it's snowing again, right? So that kind of idea. So software keystrokes, and we'll demonstrate this. So scene heading, you're basically just typing in I, and it'll start to say, hey, I think you mean interior, or E will be for exterior. And then you put the location name, and what it does then, it starts to catalog that. So that it says, if it's an old farmhouse, it knows that there's an old farmhouse, becomes a location name. And it has a database then, so when you go back, you're going to go like O, and it's going to show up old farmhouse. So you can just hit enter, and you continue. Time of day. Then by hitting day, D or N, it's going to go day, night, A for afternoon, and so on. So that's the three things. Is it interior or exterior? What is the location name? And what time of day is it? And again, you can see why that's important, because when you're filming, you need to know, is it inside? Is it outside? Where is it? What's the location? And what time of day is it? Because for filming, you need to know if it's night, it has to be either filmed at night or it has to be lit and created to look like night, right? So really different versus day. You usually would film that in the day and go from there, right? So that's a really important thing to understand. Then you go to the action. So you can add all the description things, and then you go to tab, and that gets you to the character name. So the first time you have to write the character's name, and then there will be a database. So narrator and Julie, after I write those, anytime I go N or J, it's going to suggest, hey, did you mean Julie? So here's another fun thing too. So if all your characters start with J, it's going to get annoying if it's Julie, John, James, Jill. Every time you put J, you're going to have all these 4 characters. So, that diversity of names are really great, because then it makes it a little bit easier for your character names as you go through. Then you go return. It's going to go to the dialog box, which is centered. And then you hit return, and then you get to the action, and then you continue. And it just keeps going on and on and on. Here's some of the screenwriting software quick keys. And you can go back to this video again. You can rewatch all these. So These are just some of the main basic ones. Type I or E to get interior, exterior. Hit return key to go to the action. Hit tab to go to the character name. Hit tab to go to the expression box, such as laughing, sad. Hit return to go to the dialog box. Command S is save. Command Z is undo. That's always the golden key there, Command Z. Delete, just like any kind of word processor. There's a moon symbol, and that toggles between the night mode and regular mode. So it's either like on black paper or white paper. Then the element, you can toggle on the top, and you can say, hey, I want to change this. So, you know, if you want to make a dialogue, not dialogue, right? If something was a mistake. And then here's a fun one too, script notes. You can go Shift Command plus K, and it adds notes on what you've highlighted. So let's give this a look. I'm going to go right into Final Draft here, and let's give it a look. So I've taken my beat board. I'm just going to zoom in here a little bit. I'll need to zoom out eventually too. But I've taken my beat board, and so now I can start typing. So I can say, interior. You can see now I can start translating it. Interior mansion. E. See, I go E and it goes evening. So now I'm going to hit return. It goes to the next part. A young woman. Oops. I'm not going to say what her name is necessarily. A young woman sits alone at a large oak dining room table using her chopsticks. She wrangles a small piece of sushi. A ghost walks behind her. She spins her head towards it. So here I can say Susie. So I hit tab, Susie. And if I hit tab again, I can say loudly. So I might want to, you know, kind of express how she's saying it. So tab, and I hit return. And you can see now it's right in the middle, and it lets me go right into her dialogue. Who's there? Oh, let's go like this. What are you? Or leave me alone. We're gonna make it like kind of like she already knows who this ghost is. It's not like the first time. Now that, you know, just thinking about how she's reacting to it. Okay, so then I hit return and I go back to the action. So I think this is really key. So here's basically our format. So we have interior, mansion, evening. So we have interior or exterior, where the location is, time of day. This is our action, like our description lines. So we explain visually, we're just showing what's happening. Then we have our character. We can say how they're expressing it. And then her dialogue. Softly. We have work to do before the morning comes. Right? So that's it. So you can see ghost, softly, and then we keep going from there. The ghost takes the chopsticks and stabs a sushi roll with the other end of the chopstick going into the wooden table. Susie sits still as the ghost sits down across the table from her. So you can see this is all we're doing, is we're just doing descriptions, the character names, expression, like how their dialogue note, their dialogue, and then we go back into that. And this is it. This is screenwriting. So that's our scene. That would be like the first scene. So now if she goes, if we need to go to the exterior, let's go EXT. You can see it knows what that is. Exterior, and you can see mansion already shows up. So I go return, yes, mansion, evening. And I continue going from there. So scene by scene by scene, we write this script. And that is it. That's the process of writing. So then let's say I want to have a bit of a note. So let's go right here and we can say, hey, you know what? Shift Command K. And look at this. I can put a note right here and say, oops, save. I'm going to go to this note here. I'm going to say, have more, add more about what ghost looks like. So as you're writing, you can add these notes, which is really fantastic, because that way they can just be stuck here. They're like little stickies. So you can just be like, that way you know what it refers to, and it says, hey, there's a little bit here. So I'm just going to remind myself, hey, you know what? I want to describe this ghost a little bit more. So you just put that. So it was Shift Command K, add a note, and we go from there. There's also a script note. So you can go insert, and you go up here, insert script note, and we go that. The key is though, you got to highlight what you want to have the note represent. So again, I'm going to go insert script note, and there's another note. You can see that, right? So I can say describe noise of chair. So quickly, I can quickly see what what I'm referring to in these different notes and so on. And so you can see from the notes, and then I still have my reference here of my original script materials. So we just keep writing from there. Just in terms of the moon thing, you can just go right down here. So I can go quickly from day mode to the night mode. So I prefer using this night mode. I think it's a little bit gentler on the eyes. And we go from there. So that is our screenwriting process. And you can see now, so exterior mansion, Susie runs out front door, the ghost floats behind her, and we keep writing, right? So, and then I'm going to go tab, S, Susie. I don't want to help you. This isn't my problem. You are the only hope. Right, and we go on and on. So we're getting to our point. So, this is the opener. There's a huge mess, right? So I said flip the sushi table, and instead I made the ghost like stab it with the chopsticks, so it makes it really dynamic. And this is a great opener. That's a couple scenes, and you can see there's already 2 scenes to do that. Maybe there's a few more. We can keep going with this on and on and on. So that's it. That's our script writing format as we go. So then just Command S just to save it. And we go from there. Now, another thing that's, just while we're on here, I'm going to go to the title page. So you click on the title page, and then you can close it. But right on the top here, you hit title page. and I can say, what is this called? Ghost in a Mansion. Mansion. Written by, and you can just put your name. And this is important because it's always gonna, you can print with this title page. So traditionally you can put your address and phone number if you want. You don't have to. Any other kind of information, but now you have it. You can also insert an image. You can go to insert image and then, insert an image directly in there. That's it. So that would be our whole, another step to do there. So then beyond this, we can also do things, there's a focus mode that just brings everything off and then just go right into the script on the full page. That's just down here. And there's also the dictation. So you have to get a microphone. I don't have a microphone hooked up to this computer, but you can technically dictate and it will type as well, which is a really great feature. So that's a really nice way to be able to write as well. So yeah, this is our script writing. So you can see I'm just taking the beat board. I've already have my preliminary work, bringing that all, and then I can just keep it there. And as I write these, I can say, okay, well, I can get rid of these and keep going from there. Go back to the beat board, and I can always reference and say, okay, does this make sense? Okay, here's my act one. Now I want to get to this next beat, and so on. And that's how we just go from one side to the other and keep going from there. It's going to make page numbers as we get into different pages, and we go from there. So next week we're going to go into a little bit more, some other features like split dialogue, collaboration mode, and best practices for getting the script printed, making a PDF, and all of these final elements. But I encourage everyone to work on this. Go to the libraries. You can check out all the software on our computers there. If you have any questions about screenwriting or this workshop, just send me an email, tom@tbmcs.ca. Happy to answer them or provide you some more reference materials. Want to thank all our partners in this. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and we have our library partners. Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, Wasaga Beach Public Library. And this is where you can access the digital arts computer. So go there, check out Final Draft. And next week we will look at Final Draft on iPad and go through the whole iPad process. Then we're going to still look at this main software, collaboration mode, and a few other tools that we can add into it. But you can see it's really, really simple. The main thing is you can see the bulk of your work, and it's a great way to do it, and I encourage you to try this out, is that pre-production and planning of the story and the script structure, so you know exactly what you're writing, so you don't have to be guessing or making things up as you go. Although some great scripts have been written just by writers sitting down and kind of flowing it out, and that can be a process, and I'm not saying you can't do it that way. But try it out this way, pre-planning and really strategizing on what your structure is going to be, and then making that happen. So really try it out. And the best thing is just to write and just get your ideas flowing, write, get it onto digital paper, and we go from there. So thanks again for joining us. I want to encourage everyone to finish up week 4. We will get to iPads a little bit more on this software as well. So until then, I'll see everybody next week, same place, same time for week 4. Thanks for joining us this week, and have a great rest of the day.